Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar, a BD case study for the Department of Treasury. And this is, I believe, the third in the series we've done focusing specifically on agencies. And speaking for my two sidekicks, Jimmy Baker and Sean Campbell from ePipeline, I welcome you to this session. We call this series in some ways sort of the tagline, How to Sharpen Your Axe. And it's really based on Abraham Lincoln's statement where he said, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. And that analogy really does apply to winning government contracts. If you have time, the best thing you can do is sharpen your planning, identification of work, and your preparation for marketing and positioning to win a contract rather than charging out and going after that opportunity first. You're going to cut the tree down much more efficiently with a sharp axe than with a dull axe, in which you really don't know the competition, you don't understand the competitive landscape, and you don't really know the client. So we call this How to Sharpen Your Axe. Jimmy Baker is author of How to Win Business from the Federal Government. It's a great book. It's inexpensive. He has a little deal for you here. I don't know how he sells it so cheap. There's so much information in there about how to identify actionable information about where the government is spending money. Sean Campbell is a senior consultant with ePipeline, one of the leading business intelligence firms, and ePipeline is really essential, or business intelligence is really essential to identify when the opportunities are coming out and track them. Jimmy, I'm going to turn this over to you to go into the introduction. And
thanks a lot. Good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate you joining us. You know, I want to comment for just a moment. One of the reasons that we structure these BD case studies where we look at the mission, the organization, we look at the numbers associated with an agency is that ultimately when your organization starts reaching out to senior government executives, you're going to fundamentally need to know why and how you're talking about them, how it relates back to the mission, ultimately their strategic goals, and how you add value to that. And when, you know, Ed, Sean, and I all work with clients across the board, these things are part of the staples when we're going after new business. So these are very important. I'm going to let you all read this, the mission statement of the Department of Treasury on your screen right now. But as you can see, you know, it's to maintain a strong economy, and I think anyone knows that has a business for themselves right now, that's of interest to all of us. On the next slide, and forgive me, I'm just shifting over to get control of this, is I want you to understand how Treasury is really put together. It's with two components. One are departmental offices, and the other are operating bureaus. You can read for yourself there on the screen, but you know, you can look at it. It's going to collect its taxes, currency and coinage, manage government accounts and public debt, so you can start getting a sense of what the Department of Treasury does. Now, what we've put together on the next slide for you is an organizational structure so that you can understand how it breaks down from the secretary level into the different offices. We will also make these slides available to anyone that attends today's webinar. We'll send out a link where you can download them and have a copy of this. Now, I want to give you a quick snapshot. There is a new secretary at the Department of Treasury that was sworn in just barely 2 months ago. Lou is a former OMB director during the Clinton administration. I want you to understand that, you know, how Treasury is put together. You have deputy secretaries in the following offices, and I'll let you read those. And then we have bureaus. And what you've got to keep in mind, and for any of you that joined us on our webinar a few months ago about how to verticalize your approach, is that each of these bureaus are very different organizations. They have different goals, and you need to approach it that way. I've also put a link here on the slide for you that if you want to go and read this stuff for yourself and get a handle on it, there's your link to take a peek at that. Now, all that being said and done, we understand the mission of Treasury. We have a little bit of a knowledge of how it's put together. The overall budget, and I've read through it for FY 2014, it's $14.2 billion for the overall budget. The IT budget, which just got released this week, is $3.7 billion, or $886 million for DME, or the new funding. We're going to talk a little bit later in the presentation of what that means to you. Looking at the strategic goals okay? And again, we're all in business. We all work with the government. We're aware of what's going on in our economy, but they want to repair and reform the current financial system and the housing market. You can read there on the screen for yourself what some of the strategic goals are. But again, if you're tracking a deal or you're proposing something and you're going back into the government, it's very important to know how these things connect and work. I've listed a link there at the bottom where you can go and read this data for yourself. On the right of your screen there, you can see the different budgets for Treasury. Now, we're going to get ready to transfer things over to Sean Campbell. And again, Sean's going to take you through what are some of the top procurements. And I just want to say one caveat, Sean, before I hand over the reins here. I want you all to think about this. Sean's going to be showing you how you can use his tool to look at different opportunities. Take advantage of Sean's offer. You can customize this to what your company does. You know, if you do cloud, web, workflow management, collaboration, you can actually set a pipeline up to tell you what are the top deals that your company does. He's got a special offer here at the end of today, and I encourage you to take advantage of that. Sean, I'm going to switch things over now. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I appreciate everyone coming into our webinar. Thus far, we've gotten great feedback in regards to what we've shown people and how we've gone through it. And today I'm actually going to be going first in regards to some snapshots. So as you go into the landscape for opportunities, there is multiple ways to identify and qualify opportunities that are coming out. It's very easy to get lost. So as you identify the steps, you want to look for the business. Contract history is key to know where they're going to be going. The opportunities that you're going to be running into could be large or small. Many of the opportunities that people try to find would be on FBO.gov, but you're going to be getting a lead time of 90 days or less on the average. If you look in an outward view of outward to 26 months on the average to 60-plus months in advance, you're able to identify the opportunities you and your team need to find right now for the pipeline, if you will, no pun intended. When you need to sharpen your axe, you need to do it in a manner that is going to get concise and hone in on the right tree. When you do that, you're able to look at the award contracts, the RFPs, the source selections, the ones that are on hold. The government changes every day. You can look at by the office. You can look at it by ways to identify the opportunities when they come out. But keep in mind that most people really need to identify what is now and what will be. So with the next slide, this here is a short caption, and I cannot put it all on one screen, of the RFPs that are coming out within the Treasury. Now, it will break it out to specific areas within Treasury, but this one here just gives you a lead time to look at a caption of what is coming up. Now, mind you, there's many more than just the 8 that you see on the screen, but I could not fit all of them in one shot. You're able to track the opportunities, watch how they're moving, who's going after it, and that's very important and key in your playing field. In order to make it a level playing field, you need to know who you're up against. From there, you're able to show interest and also keep a management tool internally to say, hey, we don't want to go after this one. It's a no bid. From there, you're able to open up opportunities and identify exactly what is entailed in each one. When you go in and look at the award side, you're able to see right here, this is an actual caption of what is current as of today, of all the awards broken out by the offices within Treasury. These are actual amounts, and they're awarded. So it's going to give you the contract actions and or task orders if you choose each individual year. That is key for your team in business development and or your internal sales to identify where you need to be, how you need to go in, and who you need to speak with, because the contacts would go with it. From here, this is giving you a caption of the top contractors within Treasury. Now, of course, as you all see here, the number one ranked is no valid name. Reason being is it's clerical error most of the time from the government, or it's a good way of identifying the subcontractors within a prime. These prime contractors are the ones that the government shows awards on. They really don't care about the subs. And what you need to realize if you are a subcontractor is, why can't we be seen? Because one of the key plays in there is that you need to have history of performance or past within the government before they even allow you to have a contract or win a contract, if you will. And the key thing there is you can actually show what you've done under a prime. And if you are a prime, you're able to identify who the government might have listed you with. So you can verify what's going on out there in the view of the public. These are going to be broken out on a regular basis and updated every day in the current year. As we go into the next fiscal year, of course it's October instead of January, then you're going to see it drop off from 2009 and go to 2010. And that way you're going to get the bleed over from the year before anyway. So you're able to identify the market and what has happened. So if you're going to start to grow or identify where you need to grow or move away from, you're able to identify it here. On the next slide, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you see a caption of some major play opportunities within Treasury. From there, you're able to open them up and see every single nuance of the contract. Any of the important paperwork you might need that is applicable and available will be listed automatically. Your team are going to be able to lower your overhead and increase your value over time on your return because of the fact that you're making them work smarter, not harder. And that is one of the main key issues that a lot of companies hold today. They don't know what's coming and what's going. If you do have a grasp on it, that's great. But again, in the long run, the shot in the dark is where you're not going to win. Lincoln always stated it great, and that's why we use that caption. Have that axe sharpened before you go forward. So here you are going to sharpen your axe and move forward in a precise manner. Here is going to give you a list of the major contracts under a title, the major contractors that are associated within the Treasury. So as you open up each one, if it was a live link, you're able to see who's the players, what's happened with it, and it's going to be underneath a specific tier. If you notice, we have them broken out as verticals. No matter if you do IT, O&M, or AEC, we're going to have it. And we're going to be able to break it out in any manner that you need. It's all variable on what your team needs at that point in time. From here, I'm going to switch over to the next slide. And for some reason, it's not doing it. And I'm just going to let you all know that I appreciate your time. There's many nuances within ePipeline that ties into what we are speaking about today, and it ties into how your team can actually benefit in the long run. There's a lot of companies out there that like to say that they do opportunity lookups. Keep in mind, FBO.gov is your mainstay, but the government always is supposed to put the information out there. It's never always 100%. So what we are able to do is we're able to run that listing across the board to make it a longer term. And we have full-time research staff that is in your back pocket that will help your team. It will not hinder your team. It always enhances it. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to James again, and I appreciate everyone's time, and I'm actually looking forward on seeing everyone else come to the rest of our webinars as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sean. Folks, we're going to take a different direction right now, and we're going to start looking at the budget for information technology, and I'm going to show you some techniques that you can do right now with your company to understand where the new funding is in the IT budget for you. Ed, forgive me, I'm looking at the mouse now, and I don't know if I have control yet or not. I can't seem to get the slide deck to move, but if you wouldn't mind setting it over to me, and folks, bear with me just a moment. There we go. It looks like we're moving forward. So whenever I speak to an audience, whether it's around the country or on webinars, I always like to tell you what I want your takeaway to be from spending a few minutes of your time. First off, I want you to know where and what the IT budget is. I want you to understand how you can search that and find the difference between what I'm calling steady state funding and development, modernization, and enhancement. DME is the new money going into the budget. The 2014 budget for IT just came out this week. I've been going through it at length. I want you also to have an understanding of how to look at your competition in the agency, and ultimately, when Ed's going to show you in a few minutes, when you're putting all this into a pipeline and you're looking at new deals, you want to be able to say, you know, there is X amount of millions in this agency, we do this, it's of value to our company to go and talk to these people about how we help them here. Now, we're going to move on, and what I want to talk to you about is, you know, what were some of the priorities of, you know, coming out this right now in the budget, where what we're looking at. I'm going to let you read these on the screen for yourself. We'll just spend a moment on this, but you know, this theme of you know, bring your own device, getting access to information, sharing, security, looking to get ROIs on what we're doing. I have the opportunity in my line of work to interview CIOs, and one of the things they tell me that they love when contractors come in and they can show them how to generate a savings in a program that they're doing. They said it just, you know, gets their attention right off the bat. You can look at this data for yourself. You have a link there on screen. Now on the next slide, and we're going to go to that in just a moment. And Ed, I'm clicking my Mac mouse out here in California, and let's go ahead and go to the next one. I don't know. Again, these are some of the priorities from the federal CIO. And again, every agency that I'm in, open data, security, identity and access management are huge, huge things. Now, we'll go to the next slide. I want to give you a snapshot of what's going on in the Treasury budget. I've read through this. I would encourage you all, and I'm going to show you where you can find it in a moment, to go out and read it yourself. There's no substitute that. There's $3.4 billion for 2014 for the tech budget. So what that means in government speak is at the end of the federal government year of 2013 will stop at the end of September. Beginning October 1, we will start this new budget year. There's $810 million in new funding. This is over 304 budget line items. Large investments in software, enterprise collaboration, mainframe, legacy replacement, telecom, databases, etc. Where you access the IT budget, and you can look on your screen, and I have links for you, is go out to the itdashboard.gov. They have it highlighted right now. There's a kind of a feature window across the top of it there. And you can see where I have the arrow pointing on the screen. You're going to go out and you're going to download the report on IT spending. It'll click you right to it. It's a massive Excel spreadsheet. As you can see, we've got our columns up here that show us the budget for 14 and you know, what's going on right now in 13. I've highlighted Treasury across the bottom so you can get a sense of how this works, not only for Treasury but other agencies. Now, the important part of all this is once you look at the budget, you're going to go, it's in a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, you're going to go to a specific tab for Treasury. Here's what I need you to do, and this is the takeaway. I want you to make a short list of what your firm does, whether that's cloud, web, quality control, ID&V, systems engineering, you name it, mobile applications, financial management. Make a list of what you do. Just write it out on a piece of paper. Using the Control and Find feature on your keyboard, you're going to match with what your firm does. I'm going to show you an example of this in a minute to the budget line items. And what you want to look for, there's really two things that I look for. I look, A, for new programs that have new money going into them that no one's an incumbent in. I then look for programs that have a big influx of new funding, because that means that they have money to spend with me. And then the third thing I look for is if I'm looking for steady state money and I see kind of the same amount year after year, that might be a particular opportunity that I can go bid where they have existing funds and it might be coming up for recompete. So you want to look at the budget, and as I said, I have a consulting offer at the end of this. Take me up on it, and I'll go through this in more detail. When I speak on the stuff throughout the country, we usually do this in about a 3-hour session, so there's a lot here that we're giving you in a short period of time. But short list, figure out what your company does, and then tie it to the budget line items. Now, you can see here on your screen, when you hit the find feature, you type in what your company does, and it'll literally take you to that. I will tell you, there's no substitute for reading through all 300-plus line items, but again, if you want to figure out what your organization, where it plays, you highlight the budget column, the DME column, and you just do the keyword search, and that will take you in where the government's spending money as it relates to what your company does. Now, what's important with that is that your marketing activity should be surrounding that. Your business development activity should be surrounding that. You want to be chasing deals that are funded. I put this in at the end, and I encourage you all, if you didn't listen to our webinar on verticals, it's on my site, James J. Baker. We have the on-demand webinars. Ed has it out on ersadvisors.com. Listen to what we talk about when you develop a verticalized approach. It's a very important discussion. But as you can see here, the government is beginning to break down their budget line items into different kinds of verticals. This is really important to understand when you're going after a federal agency. Now, we're going to shift gears a little bit, and I want to talk to you. We gave the notion of how you look up a government, how you look up a competitor. So let's just backtrack a moment and kind of talk about what we've covered so far. So we talked about the budget. We talked about its goals. We talked about its strategy. We showed you how you can learn more about the organization. Sean came and has given you all a wonderful offer, says, hey, we have a tool that can help you look up what RFPs are germane to your company. I'll give you a 3-day trial of it. Come talk to me. So you can get going in that and begin to get your pipeline looking up. Now, the thing that most of us find when, rare are the few opportunities where there's nobody in there and there's not an incumbent, and we need to learn about who or what an incumbent does. We need to get an understanding. Have there been task orders? How they're perceived? And there's two great places to start when you look up. Sean's system has all this stuff. If you're an ePipeline user, you can find it in there. But on the Federal Procurement Data System, fpds.gov, you can literally go in and you can look at what a contract is, what the funding is, what office it came out of. They even give you who prepared it, and you can learn a whole bunch of stuff that's going on. And what Ed's going to show you later when he goes through you, how you capture this, and we're going to show you how you take this research and capture a deal. One of the really important things to know is who you're going up against, where they're in an agency, what is their value, how the government's going to look at them. And there's no substitute whenever I chase deals is I'm down in FPDS looking at who my incumbents are. So this is a really good, useful technique. I encourage you to do that. Now, last thing I'm going to share with you. So I'm showing you where the budget is. I'm showing you how to look up people that you're competing against. Is what about the 300s or the business case? So the government, they fill out something called Form 300A, and that's their business case to Congress of what the IT investment is. So how do you find that? Where do you go read about these business cases? What if you find a budget line item and you want to know more about it? In a perfect world, the business case should match up to the Exhibit 53, which is the budget line item. So here's what you do. I want you to head out to itdashboard.gov, and remember, we're going to give you an opportunity to download these slides, so we'll get this to you. You click on Portfolio. It's a tab. You click on the agency, which in this case is Treasury, and you can see on your screen you have a little tab there called Investments, and you click on that. That will bring you into the next screen. And you can see the big arrow I have for y'all on the screen. It says Current Exhibit 300. So this is a great resource. So then, after you click on the Current Exhibit 300, you're going to come into a document, and let me flip to the next slide here. Bear with me a moment. Is you're going to come into a business case document, and what you're going to see is you're going to see about the investment, what's its funding. You're going to see the line item. You can find it up in the Exhibit 53s. You're going to learn about what's the return on investment for this project. You're going to see what's the overview on the mandates, audits associated with this business case. And like I told you folks, these mission and strategic goals are real. When you look up what an agency is doing through GAO and OIG, it's unbelievably important. And when you're reaching out to senior level people, they will respond to your firm very well when you have all this stuff in line that you really understand their business and you're looking to talk to them about a solution. It provides you an overview on the progress, funding summary, and prime contracts associated with the business case. So, if my guys or I should say my team were going to go after a deal, and the questions I'd be asking: is it funded? Who are the competitors? What are the agency's goals? How do we fit this? What's our value to it? And you can get a lot of this information, that's publicly out there to take a peek at. Now, we're going to switch things over to Dr. Salzberg in just a moment. I have worked with Ed from some time. I want to share this with you all quickly as we turn things over. When I was a director of business development, long before I became a consultant and author, we would bring capture people in, and they were kind of like ostriches. They'd stick their head out of the ground every once in a while, and they didn't have a real grip on what's happening. Ed, when he was at SAIC and DynCorp, is an expert in this business. He has some phases that are very important, and as your organization, if you need help on a proposal, if you haven't developed a capture strategy, I can't tell you to take advantage of his offer and talk to him. And Ed's going to show you here in a few minutes how you can take some of this research and show you some of the phases here of how you can actually go and make a determination whether you have a realistic chance to win something or not. So without further ado, I'm going to hand things over to Ed.
Thanks, Jimmy. What you've heard is a systematic way to identify opportunities, starting with what the government says it's going to fund, and then to track the progress of those opportunities through a business intelligence service like ePipeline. They're all absolutely critical to stay as competitive as your competition is in the identification stage of a procurement. But identifying a procurement, identifying an opportunity that you can do, doesn't mean you can win it. You could actually be the most experienced, best qualified firm in the country to do a piece of work. It still doesn't mean you're going to win it for a variety of reasons. One may be that an incumbent has a proprietary application that's embedded in the service that they're providing now that's absolutely critical to the mission of the contract, to the client. And so regardless of how good your replacement or your new program might be to bring in, it's very high risk for the client to change at that point in time. So understanding the competitive nature of the opportunity is equally important, and perhaps even more important than being able to identify the opportunity. So do I have control? And I do. I'm going to go back into Treasury and pull out opportunities out of ePipeline that are in a certain period of time to give a capture manager enough time to really get on top of those. And I'm going to work with those. But before I do that, I want to talk about health measures of a company, because these are the gauges that determine whether or not you have a program that is actually competitive. You may have a good way to identify opportunities, but you also need to be competitive in these areas. So one of the prime measures that I use is firm contract backlog, and these are the measures that determine the health of the organization, well, the health of the business program, and I maintain that's really the health of the organization. Firm contract backlog is the sum of the revenue sources over a period of time, and I like to use a 5-year window because government contracts are very often issued over a 5-year period. And here you can see I have two firms plotted. with their revenue projections as a function of year, and I originally did this chart in 2008. And you can see a firm I called the Frantic Company because its revenue from dependable known sources is dropping off very fast, and this one is coming down much more slowly. I call that the Relaxed Company. So if the company were to do no more business development, this would be the revenue profile of the firm moving forward. Obviously, one firm really looks like it's in trouble, and the other firm really doesn't. I have a measure that I use and some benchmarks to tell whether or not the organization has a healthy amount of contracts in its backlog or not. But let me move on to the next measure. The next measure is a measure of the early stage procurements, because the source of revenue in order to maintain your overall revenue profile or start to grow has to come from your business development profile. So I've just plotted this on a chart, on a pyramid. Some people use a kind of a funnel, but it's based on a Shipley approach to providing some systematic ways to look at your bid pipeline. I've added a few twists to it to make it much easier for the capture teams to actually execute a capture program. So early stage opportunities I call prospects or sometimes leads, but they're not very well defined. So you may have discovered many opportunities that you can do the work, but those are only prospects. You haven't done the amount of work necessary to really qualify the opportunity. If you can move the opportunity to the second stage, you're answering a question that's very, very simple. The question is the playing field level? And what I mean by that is, does a firm have a lock on the work because of some proprietary application or some network way to collect information that's so germane to the program that the government can't change? So I stage these opportunities in a way that it's very easy for the capture team to answer the next question to get up to the next level of maturity within the program. So let me just click this a little bit more. The early stage leads here I call vitality, because it's a measure of your marketplace and whether or not there's enough going on in your marketplace. And if you don't have a very vital market, which means you've got a good way to identify opportunities, but you're not finding any, your marketplace is not very robust, and you probably need to look for new clients or start to expand your services. In the later stage opportunities, now these are ones in which the pursuits are more mature, the client knows you, you've been in to see them, there's a solution there, the client believes you're as competitive as anyone else on the playing field. That would be a stage 3 bid, or perhaps you've moved up to stage 4 where you've tilted the playing field in your direction and you've increased your win probability there. But the sum of the 3 and the 4, the bids in your stages 3 and 4, I call qualified leads backlog, and that's a measure of the vibrancy of your proposal backlog or your bid backlog, because that's where the, yes.
Chime in real quick.
Go ahead.
One of the things I wanted to say too is that when BD begins to work with capture, don't be overwhelmed if you're not in the right stage that you need to be to, because one of the things that you can do with research and meeting with people is literally move yourself into different stages of this. Very seldom do you pull an opportunity off off a budget line item or out of e-pipeline and you're automatically set with everything. There's, most cases you're going to need to move yourself through a couple stages, and the idea is, can you do that efficiently with a high probability to win?
And the question is, how do you do it? And by staging it in a certain way so that the questions are really clear is just I think a very simple way to move through these opportunities. And then finally, the later stage pursuits are ones that have been submitted, and you're waiting for adjudication here. And there are certain measures that can be used to determine whether or not you've got enough opportunities here, here, and here to have a healthy pipeline, a meaningful pipeline. But regardless, what you're trying to do is move opportunities up or off this pyramid as fast as possible. So if you can do that, if you can identify early on opportunities that you can't win, that other firms have a lock on, or you're not likely to win because the client doesn't believe you're credible, you can no-bid those and save that money and invest it in some other area. So identifying the opportunity is part of it, but having a way to really adjudicate that and move it through a framework is really important overall. So let me just move over just to a couple of other points before I get into the Department of Treasury. You could spend time positioning for an opportunity. You can identify it, spend time for positioning, and you're very well positioned. You've done everything right. You've determined which proposals to bid. You've gotten in front of the client. You've convinced them you have a solution that's at least as good as anyone else, or maybe even better, and you've tilted the playing field, and you think you might really have this one in the bag, but then you lose. And the question is why. You can lose in a lot of different ways. Positioning is one way. You need to understand the competitive landscape, special differentiators, client preferences. This all gets you well positioned, but you can also lose by not really being ready to write that proposal. So the transition from positioning into readiness to write that proposal is really, really important. A good way to determine whether you're ready is to be able to write a really competitive, compelling executive summary. So once you've identified the opportunity and you've positioned yourself, then you've got to get really ready for the opportunity overall, which is to pay attention to these kinds of things here in terms of getting all of the basic work done before that RFP comes out, so that you're not doing that work once that RFP hits, because you'll be wasting a lot of time. Okay, I'm going to speed this up just a little bit. The pursuit stages, I break them down into 4, and really, including the proposal, 5 stages. It's a Shipley approach to it, which means it's a systematic approach, just like Jimmy's approach to the budget is a really systematic approach. And I just want to show you a way that I use to array the pipeline so you can manage your opportunities as a group rather than an individual contract. If you're looking at your contracts, your opportunities individually rather than as a group like this, it's really hard to determine whether or not you've got a meaningful proposal list or not, or bid and proposal list or not. And here, I'm just plotting the maturity of the opportunity against the weeks until the RFP is due to come out. 4 weeks, 26 weeks, and so forth. So you can see that if you've got an opportunity that's in an early stage, that's okay as long as you're not moving toward the RFP release date. So from a manager, as a manager trying to get visibility into my pipeline, this chart really enables me to do that. So here are some opportunities that are pretty well positioned. The RFP is coming out, and you're in stage 3 and 2 of them, in stage 4 and 1 of them, you're in really pretty good shape, as opposed to these in which the opportunities are languishing in the pipeline and really not moving up effectively. As a manager, I want to be able to see this easily so I can question it and either make a no-bid decision early on and snap these things out, or find out what the problem is and get the capture teams to move these things up faster. So the faster you can move up into stage 3, the more time you have to work with the client and try to tilt that playing field in your direction. So speed is really important. So I'm going to do a quick example here using a company that I'll make up. Say it's a $14 million company that's current revenue run rate. It has a pretty strong firm contract backlog, that waterfall chart that I showed in the beginning, but it has a weak proposal backlog, so it needs to fill that gap from Treasury based on Jimmy's analysis. So we've looked at Treasury by looking at where the DME is, determine that Treasury is where we want to be. Now we've got to figure out what to do. We've got to go find that money, and even though it may be new money, it's not necessarily going to be a new contract. So it's going to probably be either in an existing contract or one of the awards that are coming up. So let me just pull up a spreadsheet. So here's what I did. If I were in charge of the business development for this $14 million company, I would be taking a look out from about July 2013 out to the end of the following year to try to establish my proposal backlog and start to fill that pipeline with opportunities, identify opportunities that I can really win. These are still prospects. So here I've pulled out everything that's in Treasury between now and the end of the following year, and there's not too many. And then I need to work down through these and see what I can actually do. And this comes right out of ePipeline, and this is a pretty good sort. There's a couple of other things you might add in here, but if you do a sort on the opportunity with the office, the types of worths, so you can match that up against your capabilities, the value of the opportunity in thousands, and when that RFP is coming out, pull out the background information, which is comes right out of the tool. See who the incumbents are. Look at the period of performance. As you can see, this is 5 years. Most of them are 5-year contracts. You can at least get a sense as to whether you want to add this to your prospects or not. So let's assume that this is a $14 million enterprise solutions company looking for opportunities to add to its Treasury bid list. So here's one in which the department is looking at experienced partners to provide O&M support, continuity of services, deployed services, data delivery, a little operational, I would say, but I'm going to keep that on the list anyway. The next one is training, operation management for capacity building. I didn't add that one to the list. Technical instruction, well, we're not an enforcement company. Electronic funds systems for IRS. This may be fairly competitive. I can see there are 3 incumbents over there, but it hits our services, so I added it. And then a IT support services contract for the comptroller. Running a technical assistance center. Providing help desk, little operational too, but I added that one anyway just for illustrative reasons. The nationwide explosive detection dog team, I think we'll pass that one up. Security, I think we'll pass that one up. Working in the investment community, I'm going to pass that one up. Custodial services, but records management I'm going to include. So out of this, I discovered about 4 opportunities that I'm going to add to my pipeline. And I'm going to drop it into a tool that I developed for clients. It's called the Business Acquisition Tracker. And it's a way to manage your pipeline and also the capture. So here I'm in the contract capture tracker part of the opportunity where I'm looking at one of the opportunities that I put into it. But before I do that, I want to just take a look at the database itself. And you can see these are the 4 opportunities here that I just added, and I had one in already. And I pulled out a quick view of some of the important information. Let me go back to that individual view. And here I can manage the whole opportunity and through the capture actions, pull up all the metadata, and I haven't filled it all in yet. Look at the value. Determine an expected value, a discounted value, do some estimates about what it's going to cost to go after that, and then really importantly look at what the information is that's needed in order to move to the next stage of the opportunity. Now here I've moved this from stage 1 to stage 2, and the goal of the capture team now is to move it up into stage 3 so that I know that I have a competitive pursuit at that point. If I can't get the opportunity from stage 2 to stage 3, which means that there's no firm that has a lock on the work, but since I'm in stage 2, I don't know if I'm credible. I haven't been able to crack into that office very well. I would recommend not to bid that and not to do a flyer and only bid things from stage 3 and stage 4. If you do that, your win rates absolutely have to go up, and you'll really end up with explosive growth within the organization. So here I've modeled the company, and here's a dashboard of the backlogs of the company. and it's a $14 million company in which it has a very strong contract backlog of 125% of a industry standard benchmark. But if you look at the other parts of its pipeline, it weakens quickly. Its qualified proposal backlog is only 7% of the benchmark, extremely weak, and its qualified leads and its early stage pursuits are very weak as well. So this company is actually, even though it looks like it has a very strong platform, which it does in its current contracts, at some point in the next couple of years, it's going to be in trouble because it doesn't have the amount of leads, the number of leads, the amount of work in its backlog to maintain its revenue base and start to grow overall. So it's important to have a systematic way to identify the opportunities, a systematic way to be able to determine where the new money is going, but it's equally important, and in a lot of ways more important, to have a systematic way to approach those opportunities so you can move them through a process so that all of the things that the company bids, and I've plotted what's in that spreadsheet here, so that all of the opportunities that the company bids are up in this area rather than down in that area. And if you can do that and only bid opportunities that are qualified, that you're well positioned, your win rates will increase significantly. When I was at SAIC through the late 70s into the 90s, I think we invented the Shipley process. It wasn't around in the late 70s, but we just developed a more systematic approach to business development. Our win rates skyrocketed, our growth skyrocketed, and I'd say we're really well ahead of the competition at that point. Now everybody's caught up, and what I'm talking about right now is not real news. But what I think I've done here is put it into a context where firms can move forward much more easily with an approach, and that capture teams have a really firm basis to move forward. So with that, I'm going to move back to the slideshow and see what we have in terms of questions.
And Ed, this is Sean. One thing I would like to add to everybody is that when Ed looks up specific opportunities that are coming out within a specific time frame in a specific department, you are also able to identify them by the agency office, and that would overload you to a point where it's too broad of a search. So what he did in that example was hone in on a specific area within Treasury for those areas. There are multiple offices, and as of right now, there are 296 opportunities upcoming within that time frame within Treasury.
Mm-hmm. And they change a lot.
Absolutely.
I didn't mention in the beginning that there's a little question box right there in your go-to-meeting window, and there are some questions in there now, but if you do have a question, just type them in and we'll get to as many as we can in the next 15 or 20 minutes. So Sean, the first question is for you. Does the tool give information into the incumbent or task orders or any other information about the previous contractor?
Yes, in regards to the awards for an incumbent, you're able to identify who holds it currently, if it's still an active one that's going to end soon, how much they're invoicing the government, and it will be either known as a contract action or a task order. If it is a specific contract vehicle, if you will be able to get the notifications of award. However, if you are not a contractor within that closed vehicle, you are not allowed to have that information. But we are able to give you X amount of information above and beyond what a normal outsider can look at. So the answer is yes and yes.
Okay, and the question just came up, does ePipeline include SOWs for incumbent contracts? You said that.
Absolutely. Every time you look up a contract report, which I call an opportunity report within the e-pipeline, once you open those up individually, there's an area that will spiderweb you back to the contract award originator. And what I call them as is there's a parent contract to a peer contract to a child contract. And they will spiderweb you right back to the originators. The SOWs are always going to be involved in those.
Okay. Can small businesses become as competitive? How can a small business, let me interpret this, how can a small business be competitive with a larger business? And can the tools that you are talking about help you do that?
Absolutely. And I would say this, from what us three have gone through today, there's large businesses out there and small businesses, and everybody wants to go to the same result. However, like I mentioned in my my arena, you are trying to identify where you need to be. If you do not have the background with awards under your belt for history of work, then it's almost like you're just leaving college and you have no credit yet. You have to have some kind of credit to get credit. Same thing in the government. As an SBA company, you have a lot of different certifications that you can go after internally. You can talk to an SBA advisor, which I highly recommend to do so. They will then guide you as a small business to let you see where you can go. Now, if you don't do any of that, one of the things that you can do is you can look at the incumbent of a contract. Contact them. You can ask them if they have mentorships. You can ask them if you are able to work with them on a contract. So whatever your capabilities are and whatever your expertise is, you're able to bring that to the table. And a larger contractor is always open to see that and speak with you about that. That is key. So when you identify an opportunity and you think you're too small for a, $800 million contract over the next 8 years, then you're able to go to the incumbent and say, look, we can do A, B, and C order on this contract. And then they will come back to you and let you know if they want to work with you. Joint ventures are always good as well. If you don't have a specific certification, let's say if they're looking for an SDVOSB or an 8A, you can then look for a joint venture to do so. So the partnerships are key as well. Not a lot of people realize that.
Let me also give a different perspective. I work with both large and small companies, and one of the things too that I want you all to think about on the horn is the very last slide or the very last topic when you present to government is all your credentials. But if you're going after a senior level person in government and you're showing them how you fix a problem they have, and you're talking to them about where you've done that and the kind of return on investment they can anticipate. I will tell you, I've worked with companies that have never even gone into an agency, and we've been able to articulate that to senior management, and within a few months, they're in their meeting because they're able to show a value to their problems, and they've really researched it. And the other thing that you want to think about is that for this small business, I don't know what your size is, but let's just say, just kind of arbitrarily saying this number, 25 people or anywhere between $2.5 to $4 million in that ballpark. The government's also going to look at risk, and so they're going to say, okay, we can go after this. And I think as you're beginning to look at it, and you really you run the agency research, what you're going to start finding is, oh man, there's a pocket of X amount here that we can go and do something different, that we can bring them. And I'm telling you, with all the CIOs, and I talk to a ton of them, if you're able to show innovation, cost savings, and help fix a problem that they have, very few people get into, hey, are you a small business or not? They get into respecting you all as a subject matter expert and a vital part to fixing a problem that they have in their agency.
Right. I have several small businesses, and usually there's a focus on your own capabilities. Sometimes a very narrow focus on your own capabilities. I mean, you got into the business because you're very good at something. And I learned the trade at SAIC. Well, when I got there, it was a $50 million business, which at the time was a pretty large business. And people keep saying to me, well, it's so hard to grow. I can't do work in these other areas. We're so small. How do we go compete? And if it were true that if you're a small business and all you can do is small business set-asides and all you can do is narrow work that's directly in the crosshairs of your capabilities, if that were true, SAIC would still be a three-person company. So since it's a 10,000-person company before it's split up, it has to be true that there are ways to go from wherever you are to a larger size. And that has to do with identifying it really is clearly looking at your capabilities and your position in the marketplace, being able to identify where the money is going, translate that into opportunities, and find ways to win a contract. There's always a way to win a contract. Sometimes it may take longer than you have to do it. Sometimes it may be more expensive to do everything that's necessary. But there's always a way to win a contract. The real job in managing your opportunities is find the ones that you can win affordably and in a reasonable period, position yourself in a reasonable period of time to be successful. Here's a question about finding non-IT data. We don't do IT work. Can we find the same kind of DME types of information about programmatic support?
Let me tell you what you can find. I read both budgets, but in the overall budget, what it will tell you where new investments are, but it's not as easy as a spreadsheet. You literally kind of go through the budget breakdowns and study, and it's not as easy doing Command F, but the data is absolutely there. I'm actually doing an analysis right now for another client in another agency, and I've literally spent this entire week going through the entire budget, and it's there. It just doesn't connect as easily as the IT stuff, but it's absolutely there. Most agencies will have their 2014 update and begin going through the sections and begin tying it back to the people and the money that you can talk to understand how it trickles in.
Mm-hmm. The budget documents the budget documents are just a wealth of information.
Well, and also ePipeline does a lot of that. I specialize in technology, but ePipeline also does the different. They just don't do technology; they do the entire budget. They do all opportunities.
That's exactly what I was going to mention. Whatever realm you're in, we cover all tiers of the government, and you're able to identify easily the opportunities. Let's say if you're in construction. We even have an area that you can do the going green or the recovery of the Obama camp. You can identify opportunities that are coming up long-term and or quick push. So to rearrange the question to fit for an SBA as well, if you are trying to grow your business from an SBA standpoint in, let's say, a construction realm, you're able to identify the smaller opportunities that are quick push opportunities, run with those, and start getting your teeth fixed into the right manner. So in other words, again, going back to, the main phrase and quote from Abraham Lincoln is to sharpen the axe, and you can go right in. And you can
I'm sorry, Sean, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no. What I was just going to close with is we are able to cover it. We're able to identify the opportunities for you no matter what kind of work or scope of work you do.
Yeah, and what I was going to say, too, is that I just grabbed my Safari browser and pulled up a bookmark I had, and I'm going to talk about another agency just for a moment because we're going to be presenting Health and Human Services next month, but I'm looking at page 3 of their budget. And what they talk in terms of, for FY 2014, we're going to be investing over $220 more million than what we did the year before to meet these goals, and together these investments will be this. So they do spell it out. They do give you charts on it. It's just not as, I don't think it's as easy as the IT, and the IT stuff is hard, but you are able to go through and pull that rhetoric out and make those plans. Just another area, I had to do a research assignment on a specific office in a specific department under a specific agency what their budget was, and they weren't out in the IT stuff. And I pulled together the data by reading through a bunch of different budget documents, and we're able to stream what they had for spending. So it's absolutely there. You just have to piece it together a bit different.
One last question, because we're running really right at the end of time. Is there similar information about budgets and tracking opportunities at the state and local level as there is at the federal level? And ePipeline does that.
The state and local level is a whole other ball of wax. There's over 89,000 state and local offices nationwide. None of them are on the same wavelength twice. I say that time in and time out to clients. With our live research capabilities, you are able to have us help you with that on a case-by-case. You just contact me and I can look those up. It is very hard to identify awarded data for the state and locals, but we are able to identify what has happened. And then I can put it into a, let's just call it a Happy Meal kind of drive-through, if you will, so you can identify where you need to be. State and local, I can go more into a detail over an hour-long meeting with the individual that asked that, and I can have that pulled up and shown. But
yeah, and I'm also happy to talk on that.
Too much.
I was just going to say too, Sean's tool is awesome for the state and local, but Sean was saying they're all different. I did a campaign for a client across state governments, and you're gonna have to do a little bit more work, but there is absolutely a way to do it. But they don't present stuff as collectively as the federal does. The Public Sector Technology Exchange is doing an event end of May on the telecom budget in the state of California. And the other thing too, one of the things that we've talked about, all three of us, is that we're going to begin doing some state profiles for y'all down the road on how this works. But it's positioned and sorted differently. It's not as easy to get the data. And but like I said, ePipeline, awesome place to start. I can share with you some stories of and strategies that I've used to access things like Medicaid fraud budgets, different budgets for fusion centers, or different things that states are doing. You just have to develop a savviness of how to study it. But folks, take Sean up on that offer. You can probably gain a lot of information in that.
Well, and with that said, let's just move on to the special offers you claim, Jimmy. So what is this?
Hey, folks, I'm putting this out there to you. I have a book called How to Win Business from the Government. It's very tactical. It will give you a strategy. If you're from a sales background, great, you'll learn more. If you're from a technical background, you're going to learn a process. Here's the deal. If you go buy a copy, either paperback, I think it's running $18 out on Amazon, or you download it on your Kindle for $7, send me a copy of the receipt. And what I'll do a half-hour, 45-minute strategy session with you and your team, and we can talk about and go through some of these exercises that I went through on the webinar today and get into a little more detail about it. I know sometimes we go through points really quick, and we can spend a little bit more time on that. And that expires May 15th. So order it. There's a link there on the screen, and love to talk to you a little bit more.
Great. Good offer.
And I've actually now have read that book from cover to cover 4 times, and I continually put a new earmark in the book.
Right. I keep the book too. It's the way to find the right information. Let me offer 2 things here. One I call proposal piloting. It's my 35th year as a government contractor, and I'm on my $3 billion in wins. Not that I have $3 billion in the bank, but the organizations I've been responsible for have won a total of about $3 million. And I do something that I call proposal piloting, which is pretty inexpensive, and it's just to get the proposal launched to the target. If you have a very experienced proposal team, people with lots of experience, you don't need this kind of help. But if you're a smaller business or you're a division within an organization kind of left on your own and you don't have that level of experience, for a few hours I'll make sure that the proposal is really headed toward the target. Increase your win rates significantly with just a little investment in time. Look at an annotated outline, perhaps the teaming strategy, back that up to what the client is really looking for, and get the proposal really piloted toward the target. And then second, I unveiled a few of my tools. One is the Business Acquisition Tracker. It's a software package. There's a desktop and a server version. It's in all of my clients, and it does much more than I was able to show here. I get pretty passionate about it and may drill down into it, but you're able to manage your whole pipeline in ways you won't find other places because the analytics are embedded in the software. You can tie that back to your resources, so you can scale your resources into your program, know how much money you need, whether you have enough, how to move it around. And all of this is explained in a training program, the Business Acquisition Training Video. They each sell for a lot more than $495, but as a webinar special, I'm going to offer the two of them, the desktop version of the software plus the Business Acquisition Video, for $495. You can run a whole company's business development program from the single version, from the single user desktop version, up to $8 or $10 million before you would need to be in a shared environment. So you make that offer, and you can, and I'll have it on the website under Webinar Special, or just drop me a note about it. And Sean, your 3-day trial and free webinar meeting really helps people understand the value of the tool and how to use it.
Yes, absolutely. And then also keep in mind, too, whomever contacts me directly at the number below and or my email direct and mentions that they were in the webinar, I have a special treat for you as well.
Ooh, I think I'm going to call. Our next event is in about a month, and we're going to do a closer look at the Department of Health and Human Services. Please register at the Public Sector Technology Exchange. I have it up on the ERS Advisors. And the rest of our schedule is up in both places, too, so we have several more webinars planned through the summer into the fall. And with that, I want to thank everyone who stuck with us to the end. Thank you very much for coming to the webinar series, and we hope you'll come to our subsequent sessions.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Yep, good day.